two pieces of interesting and important news from the Latin America Caribbean region. Nicaragua celebrates the 45th year of its independence since the 1979 Sandinista Revolution, and Venezuelans go to the polls to elect a president, or re-elect a president, this weekend. For more on that, we go to Esteli, Nicaragua, to speak with journalist Stephen Sefton. Stephen, it looks like a busy week. You want to start with the celebration in Nicaragua or the election in Venezuela? Your call, Stephen.
Well, for us, obviously, the 45th anniversary of the triumph of the Sandinista Popular Revolution is the most important event, although obviously in regional Latin American and Caribbean terms, the elections in Venezuela are much more importance in one sense. And I think the significance of our anniversary here, last Friday on July 19th, was its relevance as an indicator of the development of this emerging multicentric, multinodal, multipolar world that is being led by the Russian Federation, People's Republic of China, Islamic Republic of Iran, and so on. And the reason I think that our anniversary celebration was important in that sense is because of the very wide range of visiting official delegations. We had delegations from Algeria, from Vietnam, from Palestine. The Palestinian delegation was led by Leila Khaled, the Palestinian hero. We had delegations from Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso. And that I thought that was interesting because whereas Burkina Faso represents a more radical revolutionary element in particular in West African politics, Ivory Coast represents the more conservative, more aligned with the West element. But both of those elements of political life in Africa were present in our celebration. And and we also had representatives. We had a very high-level delegation from the Russian Federation. We had a delegation from Belarus. The People's Republic of China were represented by their ambassador here, but also we had an important delegation of CGTN, the Chinese media outlet. We had a very wide representation of the majority world in this anniversary celebration, and President Daniel Ortega in his address to the crowd that was there, big crowd, we had he made specific reference to Nicaragua's role in support of this whole process of building a more democratic, a more just, a more equitable world order, in particular for the countries of the majority world.
Yeah, Nicaragua was an early member of this emerging group of, I don't know, other wayers of basically, building a global, economic and social and otherwise, network of independent sovereign countries, one of volition rather than conquest.
I absolutely. I'm very much in tune with you and I both probably remember the ideals of the non-aligned movement back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And so that was slowly kind of shoved to the margins by subsequent developments in international relations. But it's precisely those ideals and that vision of equality and respect between the states that is now taking priority and becoming a real imperative for the countries of the majority world, especially with the steady decline in the power of the still imperialist nations in North America and Europe. So that was very much, and also another important element for us was the strong element of international solidarity from grassroots organizations. We had over 90 delegates from different organizations in the United States and Canada. There were 100 delegates from Mexico, 100 delegates from Chile, and a couple of other 100 delegates from European countries in the European Union and elsewhere. So that it was a huge demonstration of support and recognition for Nicaragua's Sandinista revolution, and in particular for the current government led by President Daniel Ortega. And then also in that context, also speaking at that event was Ivan Gil, the Venezuelan foreign minister. And he made very, very clear the strong connection, the indissoluble connection that the Venezuelan authority, the Venezuelan government, the representatives of the revolutionary Venezuelan Party of Socialist Unity, the PSUV, feel for Nicaragua. And Ivan Gil, like the other representatives, there was the grandson of Nelson Mandela who was there, and both Ivan Gil and the grandson of Nelson Mandela made the point that they look to as a reference to the Sandinista revolution in Nicaragua for the development of their own autonomous political processes. So Ivan Gil made the point that this July 28th, coming up Sunday, that's going to be another day. We're convinced. Everybody's convinced that Nicolas Maduro will win. He may not win by a huge margin. His margin may only be 3 or 4 or 5%, something like that. But he'll have a decisive win on July 28th against the leading candidate Edmundo Gonzalez, who isn't really. He's the figurehead candidate. The real person behind his campaign is the terrorist supporting Maria Corina Machado, who's been a representative of Venezuela's fascist far right from the time of Chavez, from the time of Chavez's first victories back in the early 2000s.
But what about Juan Guaido?
Well, and Juan Guaido, and he's completely irrelevant now. And he was always irrelevant, except for the fact that he had the support of the United States government. And his role was not so much a political role, in my opinion. I may be wrong about this, Don. But in my opinion, his role was principally to facilitate the looting of Venezuela's patrimony.
He was like a corporation. What a corporation does when you have to do a lot of transactions, you appoint someone as like an assistant vice president. They're in charge of like signing the checks or whatever, so you can, write 100 checks at a real estate closing or something. His job was to sign the checks as they emptied out the bank accounts in New York.
And stealing the gold, stealing Citgo, stealing other national resources of the Venezuelan state. And the reason that, one of the big reasons, there are various reasons that Nicolas Maduro is going to win this election. But one is precisely because people like Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez were the people who facilitated and supported politically inside Venezuela that process of looting Venezuela's natural resources. And Venezuelan people aren't stupid. They know who did what, who's responsible for the dreadful situation that they've largely overcome. And they're well on the way to overcoming the terrible effects of the unilateral coercive measures applied against them by North America and Europe. And that's another reason that Nicolas Maduro is going to win this election, because he's successfully overcome that prolonged crisis. And now inflation is down to practically nothing in Venezuela for the first time in 20 years. Venezuela's 97% self-sufficient in food, so there are no food shortages, all that kind of thing. And national oil production is well on the way to recovery after being starved of spare parts and resources necessary to maintain adequate levels of production. And so for all these reasons, Nicolas Maduro is in a very strong position, and you and I have referred constantly in our conversations to the way Venezuela's housing programs, handing over literally millions. I think the total is now 5 million since the early 2000s of houses handed over to people, low-income people in Venezuela, to help them resolve their housing problems. And there's a whole series of things that Nicolas Maduro can count on to bolster his support in the vote on Sunday. And I'll be extremely surprised. I'll be astounded if he loses that election.
Now, when you say to someone 5 million housing units have been built in the last 10 years or whatever it is, people don't know off the top of their head generally. You're talking about a population of less than 30 million.
Right.
So you're talking about a new housing unit basically for every 6 people, or pretty much for every family.
Right. Yeah, no, and it's not just housing, Don. And
Oh,
the healthcare programs, the Misión Milagro program, supported by Cuban doctors, has cured over 1 million people who had problems with their sight. Education is made available to people from preschool up to university level in Venezuela, free. Healthcare is free, and it's the advantages for Nicolas Maduro in this election seem to be insuperable in terms of some kind of opposition victory. I just don't see how they're going to manage it because they have nothing to offer. It's the same if you look at Venezuela or Nicaragua or anywhere really. The right wing have no political program. They've no economic program. They've no social program. They've no plan for national human development or for reducing poverty. They just don't have it. Somehow, Milei managed to fluke a win in Argentina on the basis of the lackluster performance of the existing progressive government there. But that was a freak result in many ways. And in Venezuela, we're not going to see a freak result. In Venezuela, unless I'm completely mistaken, Nicolas Maduro is likely to win by a comfortable margin.
we're going to get to test your prognostication skills on Monday or Tuesday when we can next meet. And I look forward to that. And congratulations on 45 years of independence to the people there in Nicaragua.
Thanks, Don. And I look forward to talking to you next week about what happened in Venezuela on Sunday.
Same, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome, Don.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.